Welcome back to The Truth with Trinity, and I am your host, Trinity. And if this is your first time tuning into the podcast, I'd like to send you a warm welcome. Here I talk about issues that happen within the black community, hopefully for some resolution or at least some food for thought to go about your daily way. So, without further ado, I'd like to jump into this episode's topic, which is what would racial equality look like for black people in America? So, if we had racial equality between white people and black people, what would it look like in America? So, for starters, as a whole, I really don't believe that blacks in general are looking for white people to like, love, or admire them. Basically, I'm not sure if I'm just speaking for myself, but I mean, it's not about, white people accepting the color of our skin. It's not about them inviting us over to Thanksgiving dinner or playing golf with them or, actually hanging out with them. But the only thing most black people are looking for is respect. Okay, basically the same thing that Caucasians in this country are pretty much naturally entitled to. And I would like to go over a few points that would make it racially equal in this country. Starting off with number one, a true right to stand your ground. So we have this law, right? It's a particular law that states that it goes for everyone. Okay, that if anyone is ever on your private property and the owner has the right to either bear arms, so some type of firearm or something, or defend their property from an intruder, regardless of color. Okay? But the fine print states that many Europeans consider the owners of this land themselves. And although they sing American folklores of this land being your land and this land being my land, when in actuality, they view it for themselves. Okay? This really means basically that Europeans are the only ones that can truly defend themselves and their property in this country. We had a situation, a couple months ago where there was an African American that owned some type of business, maybe private owned business or his own property, personal property, and there was a European Caucasian man that came on his property. I don't know if he killed the man or had to basically physically defend his property, and the black man ended up being charged. And so this is one of the racial disparages that we have in this country, and I truly believe it's because that not all, but a lot of Caucasians in this country, they don't want to be treated like they treat other people. Okay, so they want to be able to do what they want to do to other people in this country, to be able to hit someone or assault someone first or say whatever they want to say and nothing be done back. Okay, so that's part of the problem that we do have in this country. Um, the right to fair and equal education for our children. So this is number two. Okay, so, no more knowingly employing Caucasian teachers into the urban areas that could care less or are purposely trying to hamper or impede the learning of young African American children. Okay? No more tolerance of having to endure racially abusive teachers that verbally, mentally, and sometimes physically assault our black children. Okay, with the Caucasian teachers face without the Caucasian teachers facing some type of criminal or lack of employment penalties. Okay, so no more, of them, this state in this country employing Caucasian teachers that have a history, a track record, in some instances of abusing or verbally abusing non-white children. Because the truth is, when we go into their schools, if there are any or many black teachers in the predominantly white schools, you couldn't last a day in their Caucasian schools with doing some of the things. And the failing rate, if their children started to fail with a black teacher, that teacher wouldn't even be allowed to teach. They'd be questioning the teacher's competence. Some of the abusive things that, European teachers are allowed to do in the urban schools, that if a black teacher did them in predominantly white schools, they'd be in jail for child abuse. Okay, so I want to go to number three. No more should our black children have to be forced to learn about European history in 90% at 90% of the time in predominantly black schools. So it's one thing for that to happen in European schools, predominantly European schools to learn so much about European studies. But in the urban schools where it's predominantly black children, to have to know so much about European history. Okay, with the other 5 to 10%, black children are taught about slavery. Okay, and as we well know, it gives children pride to learn about history. Okay, and what pride are our children really learning if all they're learning about is slavery? Okay, white children have the pride of learning about their history 95% of the time in school. So should black children. Okay, number 3. Black people deserve the right to go and fill out applications for bank loans, housing, and automobile loans without a Caucasian that has bias, racist, and hateful views toward black people to be able to make major decisions on African American families based off of how they feel. Meanwhile, when Caucasians sense that they are being treated unfairly or rudely, they have grievances, they have complaint procedures that never go unnoticed, okay? So no one hardly ever tells a European that the black bank accountant, clerk, or manager refused them for just reasons. So they're not told that, so they don't get an excuse made up to them that they got their application denied, even if their credit is decent or somewhere near decent, and they're being denied. If they make a complaint, it's always investigated, basically. Whites are never told that the rude behavior is only imagined. For white people, the matter or situation always goes under investigation to their advantage. So basically, as black people, what black people are asking for is for a white person not to be able to hold certain offices and positions and use their bias and hatred toward denying someone or altering someone's life basically off of how they feel. Okay. Meanwhile, when white people go places and they have, by a luck and chance, they have someone that is a black loan officer, they don't have to worry about, black people or a black person, they may have hateful views toward a white person, but they cannot let that be the determining factor and denying applications, because there's always a boss that most likely happens to be white or something. So, that white client can go make that complaint against that bank accountant and get the situation rectified in the white person's favor. And I think that's where a lot of, black people and white people differ about can black people be racist in this country? Because yes, black people can hate. They can say all sorts of nasty things. They can have all sorts of mean, hateful thoughts about white people, but that's where it stops at. Black people's thoughts cannot affect white people's lives in this country. Meanwhile, white people can have all the thoughts that they want, and it can spill over into their decision-making skills in judges' seats, courthouses, teachers, police officers. They can use their hate and display it. So that's where the power comes from. So they can kill off black people. Doctors, nurses can poison black people simply out of hatred. Meanwhile, if a black doctor or nurse makes a actual mistake on a white person, they're going to be brought up on criminal penalties. Okay, so those are the differences. Okay, if black people have to hold back their personal views about white people without letting how they feel alter decisions for loans and applications for whites, so should white people. So if black people have to hold back how they feel and be professional, white people need to be professional, and they need to be held accountable too. So they need, if they feel like they, like I said, want to hurt black people, hate black people, think whatever they want to think about black people, there should be some consequences and some investigations on their behalf when they display these type of decisions and things against black people as well. Number 4, the right to fair jail sentences. Okay? And not more jail time than a Caucasian with the same criminal record and same offenses. Not only that, but there needs to actually be some proof. Okay, so no more of black people just being accused verbally without any type of evidence, and then they go get 25 to 50 years in jail. Meanwhile, you could have a plethora amount of evidence against a European, and they still might not be. You could have you could have really cameras. You could have a videotape of them committing a crime, and they'll sweep it under the rug or find a reason not to convict them. Versus if a Caucasian says something against a black person, and sometimes and a lot of times out of just how they feel about hatred toward a black person, they don't even have to have evidence. That black person is just convicted, and so that needs to stop. There needs to be evidence every time a black person is convicted as well. The innocent until proven guilty should go for black people as well. Number 5, the right to become a candidate for employment opportunities without having to jump 200 feet high while juggling 25 tennis balls just to get the application looked at. So this goes for, entering into the Navy, job opportunities, whatever. We shouldn't have to just, work 3 times as hard as a Caucasian just to get the same job they applied for. Meanwhile, Caucasians with little to no experience or with little to no education land the jobs and climb up the ladder more quickly than black candidates with 2 to 3 times more the amount of education. Also, black people deserve the fair right to fair training and counseling without being quickly terminated off of jobs just to keep blacks struggling. Okay, so a lot of times, a black makes one mistake or something, sometimes they're fired, they're terminated. Meanwhile, if a Caucasian makes a mistake at a job, they sweep it under the rug, say it was a mistake, and they get more training. So we have less room on the job to make mistakes. Meanwhile, whites make the same amount of mistakes, if not more, in certain positions, but are not terminated, hardly ever, which in retrospect allows them to maintain homes and keep money within their families. Okay, so that's another trick that, unfortunately, that a lot of white America plays, in the job force. They'll fire a black person even for earnest mistakes. And some jobs, there's no room for very little mistakes. I understand that. Like if you're an air pilot, Secret Services, you're a doctor, you're a surgeon, there's very little room for error. But the same accountability needs to be shown for Caucasian doctors, air pilots, and Marines and things of this nature. And a lot of times they do this to cut that money so that you can't, you have to keep going around in a financial circle, keep looking for employment, keep looking for another job, getting terminated again. Meanwhile, they're less likely to terminate a Caucasian employee because they know how bad it affects their family and their financial situation. Number 6, furthermore, the acknowledgement that American black people do suffer from psychological and generational trauma from the effects of slavery. And for black people to be able to have black scholars and teachers re-educate and have therapeutic services for black people without white nationalist interference. And what I mean by that is not having and not allowing white nationalists to burn down buildings and educational centers and churches with black children and black people trying to, educate and reform themselves without paying upon the electric chair. So no more excuses, calling black people hoodlums and calling black people ignorant and primitive for, rioting for equal justice, but they're calling, Caucasians patriots. They're calling them soldiers and, giving them medals of honor for burning black people, burning black people alive, black children, black schools, black businesses, and black churches, even in 2021. So we're not talking about 1945, okay? They need to be held accountable. Their lives need to be put on the line so that it will send a message that this conduct is not tolerated on either side, from black people or white people. It doesn't just need to be one-sided. So this pretty much wraps up this segment, but I want to say this is what a little piece of racial equality looks like for black people. It's been a pleasure talking with you all. I really appreciate the time that you take out to listen to the podcast. I appreciate all my listeners for the likes and the comments that you leave. I really appreciate it. If you like this message, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button and share with other young people that need to hear this message. It's been a pleasure. If you'd like to talk to me or if you have any questions or concerns, you can contact me at thetruthwithtrinity.com. You can also listen to my podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Anchor. And always remember, if you can't tell the truth with anyone else, you can with Trinity. Till next time, take care.